The palace of Althora looked like a sunrise frozen in glass. It rose above the city with smooth gold towers and blue gardens that drifted in the air. Music floated like light. Thousands of eyes watched from balconies and from cloud paths made of crystal. In the center hall, under a dome painted with stars, an alien princess took the hand of a very quiet human man. Princess Iliara wore a veil that shimmered like rain across sand. Her eyes were bright silver, the color of her people, and they saw everything. She had grown up with tutors and champions and laws that stretched between 100 worlds. She knew the proper words to say. She knew the proper way to stand. And she knew that many at court thought humans were small, soft, and new. The man at her side was named Daniel Reed. He did not look like a warrior from a space epic. He did not have heavy implants or a long coat of royal silk. He wore a simple suit of pale gray. He stood straight, but he did not push the air as some powerful people did. He seemed to leave room for others. When he smiled, it was a small thing, and it made people breathe easier. They said their vows before the star altar. The court musicians played a gentle song. A long scroll unrolled. An elder read the peace terms and trade promises, and the cultural exchange agreement between Earth and the Valthran Empire. Many nobles watched with interest, and some with cold eyes. They whispered that the princess had a strange taste. They whispered that a human was not fit for her. They said Earth was bold, but small, a seed among forests. Iliara heard them, because she always heard the things people did not want her to hear. But she looked at Daniel and saw patience in him. She had seen it the first time, when he had poured tea for her, and the cup rattled in its saucer because he was nervous. He had held the cup steady and said, "It is an honor to meet you, princess," in a voice as calm as a river at night. He had asked her about her home world and listened with full attention. He did not try to impress. He did not show off. He asked questions and smiled. When the ceremony ended, the crowd broke into small groups, and the air filled with speech. Courtiers came to offer cold congratulations. Some studied Daniel as if he were a new kind of plant. The princess's uncle, Lord Vossen, bowed and said, "Earth breeds charm, it seems. And courage to stand in our light."
Oh.
Daniel said, "Thank you for having me. I hope to earn your trust." He meant it. He said it in a simple way, not like a diplomat who had practiced 100 lines. Lord Vossen tried to press him with questions about trade gaps and star lanes. Daniel just smiled a little and said, "I'm only a logistics officer, my lord. I make sure food arrives when people are hungry and ships have fuel when they need it. Others will speak for Earth on grand matters." Later, in a quiet garden where the air smelled like soft mint, Iliara said, "You are not only a logistics officer." Daniel looked at a small pool where fish with feather tails drifted. He paused before he answered. "I helped in the Orion crisis," he said. "I was part of the team that moved people off-world when the belts went unstable. I learned a lot, mostly about how not to panic and how to help others do the same. But I'm not a hero. I'm better with maps and lists."
What?
"I think you hide your light," she said. He shrugged. "I think I try to use it where it helps, not where it shines." That night, they ate together in a small dining room far from the big halls. He cooked for her, to the surprise of the servants. He made a simple earth dish with noodles, mushrooms, and herbs. He boiled water. He peeled garlic. He did it all with that quiet care he had. The princess tasted the food and laughed. "It is so good," she said. "And so honest," he smiled. "It is a recipe from my grandmother. She said food should be kind." Days turned into a gentle rhythm. Iliara held council in the mornings and walked the sky gardens in the afternoons. Daniel met with trade staff and learned the shape of the Empire's supply lines. At night, they read to each other. He would read old Earth poems with small words and large feelings. She would read from Valtheran star tales about wind that could sing and ships that could dream. They grew easy together, but the Empire did not rest. Border worlds changed hands. Old treaties woke up and yawned. A new corridor of space opened through a gas field, and many powers wanted it. The Valthuran Council voted to send a royal delegation to the frontier to speak at a peace summit. They asked Ilyara to go, for her voice was clear, and her presence was known to calm storms. "I will go," she said. She looked at Daniel. "Will you come with me?" "Of course," he said. "I can help your team with planning. I can make sure you have what you need." They left the palace in a bright ship with a curved hull like a shell. The name on its side was Luminous Tide. It carried the princess. Her guards, 5 advisors, a small kitchen staff, and Daniel, the captain, a woman with gold eyes named Commander Sail, showed them the bridge with pride. "We are fast," she said, "and very safe." The first days were smooth. The stars slid by like slow snow. Daniel spent time with the quartermaster, a young Valthuran who kept losing count of things. "Make a simple list," Daniel told him. "Group things by where they go, not by what they are. Put big labels. Use color. Mark the date next to every number. Then you will not fear your own notes." The quartermaster tried it and later said, with a shy grin, "It works." In the galley, Daniel cooked a meal once a week. The crew lined up with happy faces. He taught the head cook how to make bread that cracked on top and was soft inside. He taught a guard to dice with a rocking motion of the knife, so the board did not scar. "You are a diplomat of the stomach," the guard joked. Daniel laughed. "Food is logistics for the heart." Ilyara watched him build tiny bridges like this, one person at a time, and felt warmth. She also watched him move through the ship. He paid attention to small things, the slight buzz in a door seal, the way a data screen flickered sometimes, the tired way a technician rubbed her eyes. He would fix the seal, change the display, hand the technician a cup of tea. He did these things as if they mattered. He never made a speech about them. On the 7th day, the light changed. The stars ahead seemed too sharp. A thin band like a blade crossed their path. Commander Sail frowned. "Ion shear," she said. "A storm in the gas currents? Not common here." She gave orders in a steady voice. Shields shifted to a broader pattern. Power reserves were checked. The ship turned its nose slightly to cut the storm at a safer angle, but the storm was not normal. The band widened. It had layers like rings in a tree, each with its own hunger. When the luminous tide touched the edge, the hull sang like a bell. Lights dimmed and swelled. The deck rose and fell like breath. On the bridge, a panel blew a tiny spark, just a flash like a firefly, and went dark. "Hold course," Sail said. "We'll ride it." They did. They rode it through an hour of strange pressure. The crew held their stations. Ilyara stood behind the captain's chair and kept her hands loose at her sides. Daniel watched the power graphs on a sidescreen.com. He said nothing. When they came out, the ship seemed fine. The hull stopped singing. Most lights stayed on. People smiled with relief. But one thing had changed. It was small. It hid. It was in the coolant that ran through the core, a tiny leak in a sensor that told the ship how hot it was. The storm had shaken the seal. The sensor showed false numbers now. The core would run a little warmer, and the system would think it was fine. The warning would never sound. For 3 hours, nothing happened. The crew ate. The princess practiced her speech in a quiet room. Daniel played chess by himself on a tablet and lost on purpose to test the app's pride. The first sign came to the laundry. A woman opened a machine and felt a wave of heat. "Strange," she said, and closed it. She told no one. It was laundry. Laundry was always warm. The second sign came to the water tanks. A user opened a tap and the water ran hot, then very hot, then normal. He blinked and moved on. He had work to do. The third sign came to Daniel. He walked the service aisle behind the galley to check a vent, and his hand passed near the wall and stung. He stopped. He pressed his palm to the metal again. Lighter this time. Warm. Not warm like a kitchen. Warm like a machine trying to whisper a secret. He looked at the little pipe labels. He opened a panel with a simple tool the crew had given him. He watched numbers. They did not match the numbers he remembered from the tour. He checked the next panel and the next. In 5 minutes, he knew the pattern. Heat was moving in a slow wave from a place near the core. It was like a low fever in a giant body. Daniel closed the panels and went to the bridge at an easy pace, so no one would worry just because he moved fast. He stood beside Ilyara and bowed slightly to Commander Sale. "Forgive me, Commander," he said. "May I ask for a quiet check on the core coolant loop sensors? I think we may have a misread." Sale looked at him with polite patience. "We just ran diagnostics after the storm." "I believe the storm may have shaken a seal," Daniel said. "It may not show in the simple test. It may need a physical check with the suit and eyes." Sale frowned at the screens. "Why do you think this?" "Heat in the wrong places," he said. "Not much. Just enough to worry me." Ilyara touched the rail. "Commander, please send a team," she said. "At once?" Sale was a good leader. She nodded and tapped orders. 2 technicians put on slim suits and crawled into the warm spaces where only small people could go. 10 minutes later, one of them spoke in a tight voice. "There's a leak in a sensor seal. The reading is wrong by 12%. 12, Sale said softly. "And our safety margin is 10. "Shut it down," Daniel said, not loud, not dramatic. "Please isolate that loop and switch to the alternate path. We need to slow the core over 30 minutes to avoid a flux surge." Sale snapped into action. The bridge came alive. Systems shifted. The ship slowed. Lights dimmed a little to cut draw. The cooling path flipped to the reserve. For a moment, the graph dipped the wrong way. A low alarm throbbed in the deck like a slow heartbeat. Sale's jaw tightened. Daniel watched the numbers fall, one by one, steady. Like rain that had finally started after a long, dry hour. The alarm went quiet. Ilyara let out a breath she did not know she was holding. The bridge crew laughed with relief. Someone clapped once, then caught himself. Sale looked at Daniel for a long second. "Thank you," she said. "Of course," he said. Thank the technician who crawled in there. But the storm had not finished its work. It had left small gifts in other places. A navigation fin twitched now and then. A com relay had a tiny delay. A cargo lock seal thought closed meant not quite closed. Each problem was small. Each one mattered when you added them together. Daniel asked for a full slow scan. He did it in his careful way, asking with respect, never pushing. Sale found she liked his questions. He did not try to be the captain. He tried to make the captain's job easier. She gave him access to certain maintenance logs. He made a list. He grouped it by where the problems were, not by what they were. He marked the date next to every note. He labeled in bold. He showed the list to the chief engineer. "This helps," the engineer said, rubbing tired eyes. "I see the pattern now. We'll chase them in order." They spent a calm day fixing small things. The ship felt like a home where someone had opened every window to let out the heat and scrubbed every corner. People slept better. The sky outside was clean. That night, Daniel stood alone by a viewport and watched a distant cloud of blue. Ilyara came to stand beside him. "You saved this ship today," she said. "The crew saved this ship," he said. "You saw the thing no one saw," she said. "You trusted your hands and your memory." He was quiet for a moment. "Where I come from," he said, "we learn to listen to machines when they whisper. If you wait until they scream, it may be too late." She looked at him with soft eyes. "Who taught you that?" "Many people," he said. "Some of them learned the hard way." They stood together in the gentle dark. 2 days later, the luminous tide dropped into orbit over a frontier world named Harith. It was a pale planet with gray seas and white plains where strange grass grew like lace. The Peace Summit would meet in a glass ring that floated above the capital. Shuttles moved like slow bees in a pattern. Messages flashed between ships like polite nods as they prepared to descend. A set of coded invites arrived, one for each delegation. The Valtheran one was simple. The human one was careful. The others were all in order but one. A small envoy from a minor league sent a last-minute change in landing time and a request to share a fuel dock. It was a small thing, very normal at summits. But the request crossed 3 different channels in a way that left faint echoes. It was as if the same person had walked across 3 soft rugs and left. 3 sets of footprints that almost matched and almost did not. Daniel saw the messages while he was helping the quartermaster count heat packs for the summit rooms. He did not know every foreign code, but he knew the taste of rush and panic and the smell of a plan. He passed the data through a simple filter he had written long ago to catch duplicate patterns. It flagged messages. He read them again. He tilted his head. Odd, he whispered. He took the messages to Ilyra and Sale. We should not share that fuel, Doc, he said. Shell raised one eyebrow. Why? The message path is wrong by a hair, he said. It looks like a simple relay error. But if someone wanted to create a small delay or a small accident, this is how they would begin. A fuel dock is a good place for small accidents. We can use our own dock, Sale said. We do not need theirs. Ilyra looked at Daniel. Do you think someone wishes to harm us? I think someone wishes to test us, he said. Maybe they want to see who pays attention. They declined the dock share with polite regret. An hour later, a freighter from another house took the slot. Nothing happened. Or rather, something small happened. A tiny spark jumped when the line latched, and a safety lock shut, and the freighter had a delay of an hour. The captain of the freighter cursed the cheap seal. She did not know she might have been meant to be a story in a bigger book. Daniel did not preen. He went on with his day. But Ilyra felt the air change around him. A guard who had thought of him as the man with good bread now watched him with new respect. The chief engineer sent him updates before he asked. Commander Sale began to ask his opinion on matters that were outside of stores and lists. It was not that he became more than he was. It was that people saw that what he was larger than the box they had built for him. The night before the summit, Ilyra and Daniel walked along the inner garden deck. They passed the herb wall. They talked about the speech she would give. I will say that peace is not a door that swings once, she said. It is a wheel that we must push together, and the ground is not smooth. He nodded. Good image, he said. Your people like images. And wheels are things that every world understands. Will Earth agree to the trade links? She asked. I imagine so, he said. We like to trade. We need to. We're good at making many small things and a few large ones. We need metals. We need rare things we cannot get at home. But what Earth wants most is time. Time. Time to grow, he said. Time to make mistakes that do not kill us. Time to learn how to be with old powers without asking permission for every breath. She looked at him with a soft smile. You speak like a poet sometimes. I speak like a man who has made many lists and noticed. The things the lists do not hold, he said. They stopped by the viewport where the planet turned under them like a coin. He took her hand. He did not say big words about love. He did not need to. It was there in the way he stood, close, but not crowding, light but steady. In the early hours when the ship was quiet, a whisper moved through the net again. It was softer this time. It touched the ship, inspected a door, and slid away. It was like a finger on a pocket seam. Daniel did not see it. No one did. It was very good work. In the morning, the delegation dressed in formal clothes. Ilyra wore a pale blue cloak that made her look like a piece of sky. Daniel wore a simple dark suit with a silver pin of earth on the lapel. Commander Sale watched the boarding with her arms behind her back and her eyes a little narrower than usual. They stepped into the shuttle. The door sealed with a soft click. The shuttle moved like a leaf on water, easy and smooth, down toward the ring. Ilyra breathed out and centered herself in the way her tutor had taught her. Daniel checked the emergency kit under his seat and counted quietly under his breath. He did not count to calm himself. He counted to make sure the numbers were right. Halfway down, the shuttle made a small hum it had not made before. It was the sound of a tiny motor far away, trying to get attention. The pilot frowned. Strap down, she said. She pressed a few keys. We have a slight control lag. Do we return? Ilyra asked. Not yet, the pilot said. We can continue on manual. They landed with only a little bump. The ring air was cool. A host in a robe met them and bowed and spoke welcome words. Music played. The walkway sparkled. The summit hall was a circle with a bright open sky at its center. Flags hung like soft wings. Everything seemed fine. And yet, Daniel stood near the back of the hall where the aides stood. He looked at the lighting grid and the support struts and the exits. He looked at the timetable, the breakpoints, the food service stations. He counted water jugs. He watched who watched the princess. He watched who avoided watching her. Ilya Ra spoke at noon. Her voice filled the hall like clear water. She spoke about doors and wheels and time. She spoke about the cost of cycles of fear. She spoke about children who did not know why grown ones argued but knew when there was no milk. She used images. She used simple words. The hall was quiet when she finished. Then people clapped, some with hands and some with palms that glowed in their own way. She bowed. She turned. She met Daniel's eyes far across the space. He nodded. During the next talk, a cool air draft touched his cheek. It came from the emergency vents above the west exit, which should be still unless there was a pressure change. He looked at the west exit. It was closed. He looked higher. A service panel in the corner was not flush. It was opened by the thickness of a nail. He shifted closer. He did not run. He spoke softly into his lapel to sail on the ship. "Commander, do you read me?" He told her what he saw in a few plain words. "Understood," Sail said. "We show nothing on the general scans. Do not alarm the room." Daniel moved along the wall like a man who was simply restless. He passed a food cart and smiled at the server. He looked up as if admiring the architecture. He saw the edge of a tool mark on the panel. He saw the faintest scratch on the floor below it, in the shape a small ladder might make if it had been very carefully set down and removed. He felt the air again, very soft, like a sigh. He did not know what was behind the panel. He did not know if it was a line or a lock or a lens. He only knew someone had been there, and they had been careful, and they had returned. He stepped back. He walked to the side door that led to a service corridor. There was a guard there in a uniform of the summit staff. The guard's posture was correct. The eyes were wrong not in color, but in how they moved. To even, like a metronome. Daniel had seen that look before in people who were counting down to a thing. "Good morning," Daniel said, friendly. "Could you tell me where the nearest rest station is?" He pointed vaguely toward the west exit. "Down the corridor, second left," the guard said. The voice was polite and thin. "Thank you," Daniel said. He did not go down the corridor. He walked back into the hall and found the chief of ring security, a stout woman with a scar at her temple and a tired smile. He said, "I think there is a maintenance issue at the west exit emergency vent. Would you please have one of your most trusted people look at it?" Quietly. She looked at him for a long second. She knew who he was, the quiet human the princess had married. The one who had fixed a ship with a list and a set of calm hands. She did not ask him for proof. She nodded once and murmured into her sleeve. A minute later, a maintenance worker with a patch that read Tavi walked to the west exit, carrying a bucket and a rag, looking bored. He climbed a small stool and reached up to dust. His hand slid inside. He froze. He spoke into a collar mic, very, very slowly. Then he climbed down with a steady face and walked back the way he came. The chief of security moved like a cloud across the room. Speakers clicked. A host announced a scheduled air filter test and asked everyone to take a 5-minute break in the outer ring. People grumbled. Some left their seats. Some did not. Daniel moved toward Ilyara. He took her elbow with gentle pressure that meant, "Please walk." She looked at him once and understood. They left the hall with the others. Outside, the sky shone like glass, and the air tasted like snow. The chief came to them with Tavi at her side. Her face was a careful wall. "We found a set of small devices in the vent," she said softly. They were not charged. They were placed to scare, not to harm. But one more step, one more timer, and they would have made a show of it. Ilyara's eyes were steady. "Thank you for acting fast." The chief nodded. "We will sweep the ring. We will keep this quiet. She looked at Daniel. How did you see it? I did not see it, he said. I saw the shape around it. The chief's mouth twitched. You are a modest man, she said. Sometimes, he said. The summit resumed later, calm on the surface. Underneath, the currents changed. Some delegates spoke a little more softly. Some glanced more often at the exits. Rumors moved like dust where light comes in under a door. When they returned to the luminous tide, the ship felt like a safe room in a loud house. The crew greeted them with relief. Commander Sale listened to the report and then dismissed the bridge. She looked at Daniel when they were alone with the princess. You have a habit of being in the right place at the right time, she said. I try to be in useful places, he said. Ilyara stood very still. She looked at Daniel in a way that was new, as if the world had shifted and he was standing in a different kind of light. She had known he was steady. She had known he was kind. Now she understood that under the quiet was a map with many roads, and he knew how to walk them without leaving heavy tracks. Daniel, she said, who are you? Truly, he met her gaze. He did not look away. He did not answer at once. He walked to the viewport where the planet turned, small and plain, and he put his hand against the glass. He spoke in a voice that was not loud, but it carried. I am a man from a world that had to learn fast, he said. We are not the oldest. We are not the grandest. But we have spent a long time making sure the right thing happens at the right moment with the tools we have. I do not like to make noise. I like to make things work. She took a step closer. You say you are only a logistics officer, she said. That is true, he said. And sometimes logistics is the line between a story that ends and a story that grows. He turned back to her, and for a breath he looked different. Not taller, not brighter, but more focused. As if a wind had passed over still water and the shape of the river showed through. He smiled a little, the soft smile she knew, and then it faded. A light on the console near them blinked 3 times. A soft tone sounded in the air. Not an alarm, not a warning, just a call. Commander Sale stepped to the panel and frowned. We are receiving a private signal, she said. Unlisted frequency. It's bouncing off the orbital ring. It comes with a courier code I do not recognize. Another tone answered it, as if from below the hull. The chief engineer's voice filled the room. Commander, I'm sorry to disturb. We have a small anomaly in the external lock seals. They read closed, but I can feel a draft in the maintenance tube. It's like someone breathed. Sale looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Ilyara. His eyes were calm and very clear. He rolled his shoulders once, small, to loosen them. He took a breath that was also small, like a man who knows he will need many breaths and plans to use each well, he said. Quiet enough that it felt like a promise more than a boast. Time to stop pretending. The alarm lights flickered red. Soft, but steady, and the air in the command room grew thick. Princess Ilyara stood near the viewport, her silver eyes wide but calm. Commander Sale's voice came through the com with crisp control. All decks report seal checks. Unknown signal still repeating. We are tracing. Daniel Reed, the modest man from Earth, did not speak. He walked to the nearest console, leaned down, and opened a maintenance screen the crew rarely used. His fingers moved over the keys with smooth precision. He was not rushing. He was aligning, reading, listening to the ship, the unseen enemy inside the hull of the luminous tide. Tiny magnetic spikes were activating, each no larger than a coin. They were spread like breadcrumbs through the maintenance tubes. Small devices with a single purpose: to open the airlocks from the inside. It was a plan meant to capture, not destroy. The Kryth Dominion wanted the princess alive. They wanted a bargaining piece, but they did not expect Daniel Reed, Commander. He said, turning from the console, seal the outer decks manually. Override the automatic safety locks. They're using the emergency release codes. Sale blinked. How could you? They're standard from the Orion conflict, he said simply. Humans used them once to rescue miners trapped under radiation fields. The code structure is old. Someone copied it. Sale didn't question again. She gave the order. The ship's bulkhead slid into place with heavy clicks. The sound echoed through the decks like slow drums. Daniel looked at the princess. "Stay here," he said softly. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To make sure this ship stays ours." The man who was more he moved down the corridor fast, but not loud. His footsteps were light, almost silent. The crew stepped aside as he passed. Some of them stared. They had always seen him as kind, polite, gentle. But there was something new in the way he walked. It was the same body, the same man, but every motion carried quiet purpose. In the engineering bay, smoke curled from a panel. 2 techs were trying to seal a broken circuit. "Back," Daniel said gently, taking the tool from one of them. He popped open the fuse line, rerouted power through a bypass he seemed to know by heart. The panel came back to life. "How did you Earth ships run hotter than yours?" he said. "You'll learn to fix things fast or you don't come home." He checked the main coolant grid. The pattern looked wrong. "They're not just opening doors," he muttered. "They're trying to make us vent our own air." He keyed into the communication grid. "Commander Sale, it's Daniel. If they're inside, they'll aim for Deck 8 life support control. That's where you can make a ship surrender without firing a shot." Sale's voice came sharp. "Confirmed. I'm sending a team." "No," he said. "They'll expect guards. Let me go first. You're not armed." "I don't need to be. Not yet." The boarding deck 8 was dark except for red emergency lights. The air hummed with the deep sound of systems under stress. Daniel crouched near a junction, waiting. He heard them before he saw them, the strange clatter of metallic limbs against the floor. Kryth boarders. They were insectoid, tall, with shining armor that looked grown rather than built. Their mandibles clicked as they spoke through helmet filters. Daniel slipped behind a support beam. He had no weapon, but his eyes tracked their formation with calm detail. 2 forward, 1 in the back covering. Standard infiltration team. Efficient, predictable. When they passed, he moved. He threw a maintenance tool, not at them, but at the floor. It sparked bright blue as it hit a coolant spill. The boarders froze and turned toward the flash. Daniel stepped from the shadows and hit the wall panel beside them, a pulse of white steam. He stood, breathing slow. Not once did he look proud. He picked up a communicator from one of the invaders and pressed it to his ear. Static. Then a voice, high, fast, clicking in an alien rhythm. They were talking about the bridge under siege on the upper deck. Alarms flashed again. Commander Sale's team reported motion near the control lift. Princess Ilyara stood behind the captain's chair, her hands tight around the rail. She could feel the tension, like the whole ship was holding its breath. The lift doors burst open. 2 Kryth soldiers stepped out, weapons raised. The guards fired first. Bright streaks of plasma filled the room. The sound was sharp and hard, but no blood spilled. The guards used stun charges. The aliens staggered but didn't fall. Their armor absorbed the hits. Then the 3rd soldier came out, carrying a compact device glowing blue. Sale shouted, "EMP charge. Get down." Before anyone could move, Daniel's voice came through the kill power to the bridge. Now, Sale hesitated half a second, then slammed her fist on the cutoff switch. The lights went dead. The blue glow in the alien's hand dimmed, confused by the sudden loss of energy. A moment later, the lift door slid open again, and Daniel was there. He moved fast, using the brief darkness. He ducked under the alien's reach, struck the device from its hand, and drove an elbow into the joint of its armor. The alien fell sideways, stunned. A guard flicked on a manual light. Daniel stood in the middle of the bridge, breathing hard. A simple human against 3 stunned invaders. Ilyara stared, frozen between awe and disbelief. A soldier revealed Zale's voice was quiet but clear. "Mr. Reed." "Who are you?" Daniel looked down at the fallen Kryth H. "Once, I worked for Earth Command. Crisis Response Unit. We were trained to hold things together when everyone else ran. You were a soldier." "I was a coordinator," he said. Then, after a pause, "But sometimes coordination meant picking up a rifle." The ship's internal sensors beeped. More signals, at least a dozen enemy craft approaching. They're not done, Sale said. We're outnumbered. Daniel turned to Ilyara. Can your people call for help? The nearest fleet is 12 hours away, she said. Then we make 12 hours. The human Plan-He spread a holographic layout of the ship on the table. His fingers traced lines through it, quick and sure. They'll come in waves. We can't win by fighting. We win by outsmarting. He looked up at Sale. You have a reactor shield, right? Yes, but it's fixed. Not if you reroute the coolant flow. We can pulse the shield through the outer hull for 20 seconds at a time. Enough to fry their magnetic grapples when they try to dock. Oh. Sale blinked. That's possible. Dangerous. Most good ideas are, Daniel said with a calm smile. He assigned roles small, simple, efficient. Every crew member had a task. No speeches, no hero words, just quiet instructions. He moved like a conductor of an orchestra that played survival. Within minutes, the ship's interior lights dimmed to emergency red. External sensors showed the enemy ships closing in. Ready? He asked. Ready? Said Sale. Then let's make them regret coming here. The storm around the ship, the first wave, hit like thunder. Magnetic claws gripped the hull, then sparked and tore loose as Daniel's time shield pulse surged through the outer skin of the ship. Enemy vessels spun off, smoke trailing behind them. The Krythe commander on the lead ship hissed in frustration. Inside, Daniel watched calmly. One wave down, he said. Now, they'll switch to breaching pods. Prepare Section 7 for remote venting. He tapped a command, rerouting pressure valves. The plan was dangerous. Venting a section too long could harm the crew. But timed right, it would create a vacuum burst strong enough to toss boarding pods back into space. He timed it perfectly. The second wave hit, and the luminous tide shuddered. Daniel's voice stayed calm over the intercom. Now, vent Section 7. A deep rumble echoed through the hull. Outside, the boarding pods spun away like kicked stones. On the bridge, the crew stared at the display, 10 enemy signals gone. How did you, a young officer began, humans study failure? Daniel said. We've failed often enough to know how not to repeat it. The turning point, but the Krythe were not done. They sent a larger ship, one with heavy armor and a plasma cannon meant to melt through defenses. Direct hit in 40 seconds, Sale warned. We can't take that kind of fire. Daniel frowned, thinking fast. What's the status of the communication array? Still operational, he smiled. Small, quick, a spark of Earth cunning. Then, we'll give them what they want. He started typing commands. Lines of code streamed down the screen. What are you doing? Ilyara asked. Sending them a surrender message, he said. Her eyes widened. What? Don't worry. It's not real, he explained as he worked. The message contained a trace virus, a mimic signal that would bounce off the Krythe control frequency, tricking their systems into thinking the luminous tide had already docked inside their hangar. When they fired, the plasma cannon's guidance system would aim for empty space. Sale's eyes went wide as the sensors confirmed it. The Krythe fired, and the bolt of plasma streaked past harmlessly into the void. Cheers erupted on the bridge. Daniel just leaned back, rubbing his temple. I was worried that wouldn't work, he admitted. Ilyara looked at him with quiet amazement. You make impossible things sound easy, smiled softly. That's just Earth's way of staying alive. The calm before the final wave for 2 hours. The luminous tide drifted in cautious silence. The Krythe ships regrouped. The crew repaired minor systems. Ilyara moved among her people, her voice steady, her posture calm. She saw courage reflected in them, not loud courage, but the kind that grows from trust. Daniel stood apart, staring at the stars. His mind was still moving. He knew the Krythe would not retreat easily. When Sale approached, he spoke without turning. They'll try one last thing, a mass boarding through the cargo bay. If they take that, we lose the core. Sale nodded. We'll hold it. Anya looked at her. No, I'll hold it. The battle below the cargo bay was wide and silent. lit only by the emergency lights. Daniel took cover behind a container. He had a pulse rifle slung over his shoulder, and a small control pad in his hand. The first breach pod slammed into the hole. Then another. Metal screeched. Krith's soldiers poured in a wave of armored shapes and glowing eyes. Daniel fired in controlled bursts, hitting sensors and joints. He wasn't shooting to kill. He was shooting too slow. He moved between crates, using every corner, every echo, every distraction. He pressed the pad on his wrist. "Computer," he said, "activate subdeck maglev protocol." The cargo floor shifted, magnetic plates turned on, and anything metallic jumped upward. Krith weapons flew from hands. Armor sparked. Daniel ducked, rolled, fired again. His movements were fast, efficient. Learned from long practice. When the last invader fell, the bay was full of drifting debris and smoke. Daniel lowered the rifle slowly. The intercom buzzed. "Bridge to cargo bay." "Daniel, report." He looked around. "Secure," he said simply. Aftermathers later, the stars were quiet again. The Krith ships retreated into the void, limping and burning. The luminous tide floated, scarred but alive. The crew gathered on the observation deck. They looked out at the wreckage, silent proof of their survival. Commander Sale approached Daniel. "You saved this ship," she said. He shook his head. "No. We all did. I just reminded everyone how strong they already were." She smiled faintly. "You could have commanded a fleet." "I prefer kitchens," he said softly. When she left, Ilyora came forward. Her silver eyes caught the light of the stars. "I used to think you were modest," she said. "Now I know you were merciful." Daniel looked out the window. "Humans have a saying," he said. "The quietest waves cut the deepest canyons." She took his hand. "I will never look at Earth the same way again." He smiled. "That's good. We never wanted to be feared, just..." Remembered. They stood in silence as the ship's engines came alive again, carrying them home. Epilogue. Weeks later, the story of the luminous tide spread across the Valthorn Empire. Some called it the day the humans saved a starship. Others called it the modest man who fought the void. But those who were there remembered something simpler. A man who listened when machines whispered, who fixed things quietly, who smiled when others panicked, and Princess Ilyara, every time she saw him cooking in their small kitchen aboard the ship, would smile to herself, because she knew what no one else in the galaxy truly understood. The modest man she had married was not just human. He was humanity. Calm, clever, unyielding, a species that never gave up, even when the stars themselves turned against them, and in that wide, endless sky. The legend of Daniel Reed, the humble soldier of Earth, was just beginning.